Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Al Bond. I'm the executive director here at the Avalon Foundation. I want to welcome everybody to the Avalon Theater. The Avalon's mission is really about convening community. We usually do it through arts and culture, but we also do it through civic engagement, especially with our partnership with the Talbot Spy. And that's what this evening is all about. I want to, before we get started, make it really clear that even though I believe we have enough town representatives here to violate sunshine laws, they're here to listen. This is not a town process at all. So I know that there is going to be significant process through the town and the planning department that's coming down the line, but that's not this. This is the Avalon having a partnership with the Spy. And with that said, I'd like to bring Dave Whalen here to get things started. Dave is the fearless leader of the Talbot Spy. If you don't know him, he's a great guy. Come on up, Dave. Yep.
Thank you, Al. And I actually have to read off these things because I'm not as terrific as Al is on this front. But welcome to this special Spy Night. We are so grateful for the Avalon Foundation partnership. And this sorts our public affairs and arts coverage, which is a lot. We have an election coming up, and we'll be here with a lot of public town halls, and it's going to be an important year for all of us. But I'm supposed to say, and it's important to say, that the Spy and the Avalon depend on the support of people like yourself. This month, the Spy is launching its spring fundraiser, and we want to keep spying in Talbot County for a long time, and I hope you'll consider supporting both of our organizations. But tonight is meant to be a fun and thoughtful evening. We're here to dream a little bit, to think about how Easton might plan for the 14 acres in its downtown in the years ahead. The town of Easton is already moving forward with a formal planning process, and we did a terrific interview with the town planner, Lynn Thomas. You might be here tonight about that work. It's deserved. He's a terrific guy. And I also want to point you to the town's website, which we should all know as we go into this process, which is their community input website called Engage Easton. It's engage.eastonmaryland.gov. But tonight, we're starting at the 40,000 foot level, to step a little bit outside our comfort zones, to think big, and to imagine what this unique site could be for our community now and for the future. So to help this, we've joined by two very special guests. First, my dear friend and the friend of the Spy, Rebecca Hoffberger. This is her third visit to Easton, and we're thrilled to have her back. Rebecca is the founder and first director of the American Visionary Art Museum in Baltimore. Voted one of the top attractions in Maryland consistently over many years. And she's been a really remarkable voice on how art and creativity and public space can drive economic vitality and strengthen communities. And so thank you again for being here. And our second guest is Peter Katz, who is a nationally known leader for innovative community planning for more than 2 decades. He helped launch the new urbanist movement through his landmark book, The New Urbanism, Toward an Architecture of Community, and is the founding executive director of the Congress of the New Urbanism. So welcome to you both. We're going to start with Peter giving a 10 to 15 minute overview of just some of the things that he wanted to talk about as we go into this conversation. We're going to be using the screen, and so Peter, let's start there, and then we'll all get together and start talking.
Thank you. Good evening. Let's see, I got to get my tool here. Okay. Beautiful theater, beautiful town. I just had a very quick tour. Not my first time on the Eastern Shore, but I'm seeing things I haven't seen before. It's evident that people know quality in Easton. I can tell that from driving around. And tonight's conversation is important in terms of the future of the town, because you're looking at a pretty good sized chunk of it that's going to be up for some sort of redevelopment. My comments are going to be very straightforward. Planning is often an extremely complicated activity, needlessly so. The choices really are pretty cut and dried. I'm going to walk you through some of them. You're going to be choosing from a menu of options as you go through this process, which, in my opinion, is sort of limited, because real estate development in the year 2026 generally consists of the categories that zoning allows. So these are the options you're going to choose from. The first one is housing. I went to the web the other night. I just sort of plugged in the region, and I just put the word housing. These are the pictures that popped up. I assume all of these are from the immediate environs. So you see single-family houses in some sort of subdivision in the upper right. You see one individual single-family house with the garage sticking out front. And then you see what we call multifamily. And as I drove around today, I saw some buildings that look like that one on the left. People seem to want to get as high as they can, because the views here are pretty good when you look out over the landscape. But as the buildings get higher, they also become more visible to everyone. That building doesn't really blend into the landscape. By the way, in terms of miking, I'm good, okay, great. So I'm gonna probably rove around a little bit more. My mic is here, not there. So, and by the way, folks who are seated toward the periphery, can everybody see all the way into the screen and see the full width of the screen? Good. Okay, excellent, because there's going to be a lot of detail. Now, the next image is what we call retail. It's one part of commercial. And I think these are all in the immediate area. We don't build the big regional shopping centers anymore with the Sears and the Pennies. Those sorts of things have gone away. There's a few left. There's a few big malls, places like Atlanta and Chicago. But this is really the type of thing that gets built around here. I think it's My Eye Doctor and a grocery store, Harris Teeter, Safeway, that sort of thing. A branch bank. This looks like some sort of special place for entertainment. But this is the kind of thing you see under the category of retail. And then there's another category called commercial, which includes office, industrial. A lot of this sort of thing goes up. A small office building, a business park. I'm not quite sure what that is. But these buildings come in all different shapes and sizes. This is the menu of options that exist today in the world of real estate. And there's going to be a transaction taking place between the current owner of the hospital and some future developer that's going to result in some kind of version of one of the things I just showed you. That makes me a little depressed, because these, to my mind, aren't great options. Now, in the world of development, I'm going to ask you to advance the slides, because my controller seems to have run out of gas here. Okay, there is this thing called mixed use. In the world of real estate development, this is sort of the thing a lot of people shoot for. It's some combination of different functions, whether it's, I can't really tell what's in that building. It looks like there's some housing. On the ground floor, there's something called Aspen. Go to the next slide. We see, I'm not sure what that is, whether I've heard of Aspen Dental before, but that's not their logo. So I don't know if that's the name of the senior facility. I see benches, I see a lot of pavement. I don't see a lot of sidewalks. I'm not really sure if there are blocks here or if it's just one big commercial tract. So now let's talk about something else. Let's talk about what you already have here. Towns, cities, and villages. Okay, these are not something new in the year 2026. We've been building these for centuries. There's some incredible examples across the nation, and there's some incredible examples right here in the region. DNA that you're starting with. And if I had my druthers, that's the DNA you would continue with. And so here are some pictures of that. What you see in the right-hand side is actually something I didn't mention. It's called a hamlet. A hamlet is a fraction of a village. It's a part of a village. That's Easton in the upper left. And it's a very attractive photo. I saw that photo before I ever set foot here, and I said, oh, it's a nice place. I'm looking forward to going there. These are not all old places. The picture on the bottom is a place that's been built in the last decade and a half. It's a neighborhood in Montgomery County where I live called Rockville Town Center. There's a public library there, there's restaurants, retail. And my daughter, who went to school just a few blocks away from there, that's where she would go at lunchtime to hang out with her friends, because it felt like a real place. So these are the kinds of places that I'm a supporter of. The problem is these are really hard to do. They're not real estate as usual. Almost every time one of these happens, I mean, the old ones, we just inherited. That we're happy to inherit them. But to build this new in whole cloth is very, very difficult. It's not the standard process that planning departments are set up to achieve. It takes an extra special effort. So next slide. So the word neighborhood, that wasn't one of the words I used. I said towns, cities, villages. So neighborhood is the increment. It's like the cell in our bodies, okay? Cities are made of multiple neighborhoods, 30, 40, 100. Towns have neighborhoods too, fewer, 6, 7, 8, 12. I mean, you can probably count the neighborhoods here in Easton. A village is a neighborhood that sits on its own out in the countryside, surrounded by forests, farms, things like that. And as I said before, a hamlet is a fraction of a village. But the key thing is the cellular material that all these things are made of is called a neighborhood. Next slide. Now, a neighborhood isn't just, next slide, isn't just a nice word. There's an actual physical description of what are the components of a neighborhood. And this diagram, created in 1929 by a guy named Clarence Perry, talked about what are the components. He said only neighborhood institutions like churches, city hall, library at the community center. Shopping districts can be on the periphery, on the main highway where lots of people drive by. 10% of area to recreation and parks. There's a lot of little notes here. And what's also really important, see this dotted line circle? That is a 1/4 mile radius. So from the center to the edge is a 1/4 mile, or it's a 1/2 mile all the way across. That's not an arbitrary number. That's the distance. 5 minutes from the center to the edge is the distance most people will walk rather than drive, because it just feels too stupid to get in your car and drive that short a distance. And the best neighborhoods are places that have all the needs of daily life within that circle. Now, that's not weekly or monthly. You're going to go outside the neighborhood to go to the hardware store, or the stationery store, or maybe you have one in your neighborhood. People from the other neighborhood come to your neighborhood to go to the... So there's some mixing and some blending. The neighborhood's part of that larger canvas. But that's an important diagram. And interestingly, next slide, my colleagues in the new urbanism basically said, we like this, we're going to just update it slightly. And they said, we don't like big highways, we're going to call it a boulevard. It's a different kind of street. And there's this, some of the notes repeat exactly or similarly to the earlier one. But the point being that it's a known world. The idea of how we put this together, it's generally straight streets that are continuous. They aren't cul-de-sacs. You have blocks, you have streets that wrap around the blocks, you have alleys in some cases, you have parks distributed at certain increments. There's a set of rules. They're not ironclad, but there are certain things that we see recurring in neighborhoods all over America, all over the continent, and all over the world. There are different traditions. You know, the communities laid out by the conquistadors were laid out according to the laws of the Indies. Cities like Bogota and Mexico City, I think even parts of Los Angeles. It was a document, it was a military document for how to lay out a city so that you could control the populace in the New World. But there's, you know, an incredibly rich planning tradition going back eons. And what the new urbanists have done, they didn't invent much that was new. They went back and unearthed this lost civilization. So that's the, you know, these images are available. Next slide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through how something like this might be created anew. It's not exactly the way places like this were created, but I'm going to just show you the structure. So you start with some regional roads or farm roads, or there's this weird hodgepodge of this road going around Joe's farm and another road teeing into this intersection. We're going to add, next slide, we're going to add a rail line. So not long after the Transcontinental Railroad connected the Atlantic and the Pacific in Provo, somewhere in Utah, I forget where, Promontory Point. Very quickly after that, folks started building what are called interurban railroads, which were like streetcars that would be streetcars within the city, and then they'd get out in the country, they'd go longer distances, and they would go to the next town. The Midwest is littered with these old interurban lines. Most of them have deteriorated. But it's not uncommon to see something like that in the countryside, and where there were settlements, they'd stop fairly frequently. Next slide. These circles, that's our quarter-mile circle again, what I talked about before. And you see how within a larger settlement, the circles overlap on each other. So they aren't just touching at tangent points, there's a little overlap. Next slide. And so that grid of roads, let's back up one. So you start with very large, this might be somebody's farm, and next slide, and then it gets divided up. But the blocks are uneven, they're irregular. If you take a sheet of safety glass and you drop it on the ground, it's going to develop cracks of a certain size. It's very much the way they call it a broken glass street plan, because not all the blocks are going to be identical grids. They're all slightly different sizes. Next slide. Some of those blocks tend to be a little too long to walk around. So a car can go around them easily, but if you're walking, it's really nice to have the occasional mid-block cut through. It's just, for pedestrians, it's a help. Next slide. That's the green space. If we're going to make a conscious decision to say, here's the city or town, here's countryside, we're going to draw a boundary between them. People like to get to the edge of town and say, oh, you know, I'm done with the city. You know, look at the beautiful green here. And so there are different types of open space. I don't like to just say open space. I like to say parks, squares, green belts, parkways. There are different kinds, and you need more than one. Next slide. So the other thing that's important to remember is that every street is a public space. It's not just for cars. It's for kids to play. It's, you know, it's why we need to keep the cars managed so they're not just running over our children. But they are, and if you look at the actual square footage, that's the predominant usage of public space in the city. It's not the parks, it's the streets, because it's just a whole lot of linear footage. Next slide. So that was subtle, that was quick. Let's back up one. We just added in, here we go, do it again. Some tennis courts, a pool, up there some, you know, various things at the high school, baseball diamond. We've just programmed some of our open space. Next slide. Now we've got some parking, because people have to have a way to get to these green places. And we're putting some extra parking at the center of blocks. If you need parking, that's where to put it. Don't put big parking lots where you can see them from the street. Hide them at the center of blocks. A lot of commercial districts do that. They're not glorious places, but the good news is you don't have to see them other than when you're parking your car. Next slide. Okay, we just put in lot lines. Now we can sell property. Now we can do some zoning. Now we can set the rules because we have the parcel lines to do that with. Next slide. So those colors, those are the colors you see on a zoning map. And if they look a little kind of scattered, checkerboardy, it's like there's the, I'm guessing that the light yellow is single family, the red might be attached buildings with retail on the ground floor. I'm not sure that, the color coding often varies, but the point is you look at it and you don't get a clear mental image. Everything's kind of hopscotch. Next slide. Now, what the new urbanists, we aren't big fans of zoning. We think zoning is, separating everything from everything actually creates problems. It was done for a good reason initially, which was for industry, to keep industry away from houses. This is something that's called the transect map. So what you're seeing is areas of darker purple, darker color surrounding the centers of neighborhoods, and the color fades off to lighter tones toward the edges. But there's always this adjacency. I call it mountaining up. You don't have the light color next to the dark color. You have a gradation that tells you can see by squinting your eyes where the centers are. Next slide. And this shows that transect. So the lightest color would be at the far left, which would be detached single-family houses on fairly large lots. And then you move through what's called missing middle housing, which are duplex, quadruplex. It's still not full ground coverage. And then gradually toward the right, you do get to full ground coverage. You get higher density buildings. But the point is you never have a 10-story building next to a 2-story building or 1-story building. Things move up gradually, so you never really get shocked by anything. Next slide. So we're back to our lot lines. Next slide. And the first buildings I'm going to show you are public buildings. Public buildings are special in your community. Your library, your city hall, and look at the location. So here's a public building. I don't know what this is. It might be a church. It's sort of a Greek temple type of thing. But look at this beautiful boulevard. All along the street, you look down and you see that thing at the end of it. It's terminated vista. It's something that's common to early city planning. Same thing from this direction. It's terminated. That building there, you see that big green. Anywhere along that green, you look down and see that big building at the end. This one here. Standing in this park, you're looking flat on the facade of that. And public buildings that are not in that special terminated design, like this looks like a school, they're set back with some green. So the idea is public buildings often sit back from its site. The Capitol in Washington, D.C. sits on a big green mound. It's not necessarily a bigger building than what's around it because of its site. The site tells you it's special, okay? And that's if you're going to honor your community, you're going to make public buildings special. Okay, next slide. Then we add the street trees, hugely important. They shade us in the summer. The leaves fall in the winter, so you get all the sunlight. But a continuous canopy of street trees for shade makes it easy for people to walk. Trees are super important. Okay, what have I missed so far? Okay, next slide. Now, we've just put in our stacked flats, so like apartment buildings with internal hallways. We've got some townhouses. I think many of these buildings that just came on the screen might have retail on the ground floor, but these are the largest of the buildings. They tend to surround and frame our public space. So a public building is sitting in this big public room, as are, several of these. This one in particular. You approach this, you're coming down the boulevard, the walls of that boulevard are lined by buildings. It creates a dramatic entrance. That's one of the cool tricks that planners used to do. Okay, so these are all buildings that are pretty much attached. They form a street wall. Next slide. What happened? Go back one. Okay, parking. In our modern world, you're going to need some big parking anchors. We have cars. It's something different than what we had in 1780. Okay, we got to put them somewhere. There are ways to put them, but look at these buildings. The parking garage is lined on 3 sides by other buildings with other uses. So you're not exposed to the full. I think there was another one up there. So there are architectural ways of handling the parking. Next slide. All right, those are now the townhouses. They're smaller buildings. They're still attached to one another. They probably don't have retail on the ground floor. Go back on that again. But you see how keep going, go back, forward again. So we're extending, we're starting with the biggest buildings. Now we're continuing to the next scale down. And then, next slide. Now we add the single family houses. Now, most of the region is probably made up of single family houses now. And we were already halfway through this diagram. Now we're hitting the single family, but they're blending in nicely. Next slide. Now we're adding accessory units. So we're possibly doubling the number of units that we just picked up with the single family. That's where your teenage son or daughter might live when they come back from college. That's where grandma might live, any number of things. That's where you might put your home office. It gives great flexibility. They don't have the wonderful views. They're looking at an alley, but you're dealing with your affordable housing in the grain of the neighborhood. Next slide. Next slide. So the last slide, I think, it's just the windmill, the service buildings, the agricultural sheds on the outskirts of town. Next slide. So all of this stuff, so that red circle, that's one neighborhood. And that yellow frame, that's about the size of the parcel you're dealing with relative to a neighborhood. So the point is, you're not creating a whole new neighborhood there. You're completing a neighborhood. So the question is, what is it that belongs there? What is it that fits in that area of 14 acres that somehow complements and completes what's already there? Next slide. So back to this one. Again, the goal is, in my mind, to get to something that looks like this, if possible. How do we do that? Next slide. So, in all due respect to the American Planning Association, this is not what they know how to achieve. Their tools are a comprehensive plan and a zoning ordinance, neither of which have ever been shown to produce real towns and cities. In my opinion, they generally produce horrible places. Yet that is what we continue to do. I've won a few awards from the APA, and thank you very much, but we didn't achieve what we did by working out of their standard rule book. Next slide. So changing policy is not enough. Next slide. If you're writing policy statements, so read that statement. Infill and develop in existing urbanized areas, build affordable multifamily housing near transportation corridors. You look at that picture and you say, that's nice. Yeah, that's a good policy. Let's do it. Next slide. But that also fulfills the policy. It doesn't look as nice because there are a lot of differences between this picture and the one I just showed you that make a very different place. For instance, the radius of this block, the corner, is a big sweeping curve. Go forward. A traditional block will have a tighter radius, which makes the crossing distance about half. So when you're out in the suburbs and you're wondering, why do I feel so vulnerable and exposed when I'm crossing this giant road? It's because some engineer made a big sweeping curve so the cars could go fast. When you tighten up the radius, you're doing two things. You're shortening the crossing distance and you're making the cars slow down. Next slide. Another policy statement. Preserve ag canals, foster connectivity with trails for pedestrians and bicyclists. Next picture. So that's could be what you're asking for. But next picture. But that also is. There's a whole lot of things here. The street layout's the same. The land uses are pretty much the same, except we're giving ourselves a park here. Go back. So just, look at the differences. This one has a sound wall, ostensibly for privacy. Next slide. This one doesn't need a sound wall because the buildings front the public space. So there are all these little techniques that are designed to get rid of the things you don't like sound walls. Next slide. We're getting pretty close. So you need to change the rules. And next slide. There are many different ways to regulate development. Next slide. This is what zoning gives you. basically it dictates, it dictates a land use, a density, a setback line, number of entrances, and maybe a sidewalk. It's just a big blob. But people say, well, we need more. Let's have some design guidelines. Next slide. So what the design guidelines usually say is, well, we need to have little jigs and jogs, little ins and outs. Next slide. So, make the buildings, articulate the entrances. But look here, we went to Denmark over the summer, and the historic buildings we saw all lined up flat. So obviously, it doesn't have much to do with those jigs and jogs. In fact, any contractor will tell you, you've got to waterproof all these corners. You've got a deck here that collects water that's going to fill up with leaves. That's a maintenance problem. Next slide. Yet that is what we ask for over and over again. Next slide. Without any real reality check as to whether that's really creating good places. But we're asking for it, and we're making developers spend a lot of money to deliver this stuff. Next slide. This is what a form-based code gives you. And that's a new term. Next slide. What it means is you're breaking down the block, the individual block, into multiple building types within a single block that can accomplish a number of things. Next slide. So for instance, this group of buildings here might be large houses. These happen to be in Chicago. And they have accessory units in the back. Next slide. That's small houses on the opposite block face. Next slide. These are row houses. And again, they sit on a much narrower lot, yet you're getting a lot of square footage out of these guys, but they don't have to maintain a big yard. Next slide. You've got a retail street in front, so you've got shops on the ground floor, but a building that divides in two. If we could back up. So you see the mass of this is very similar to the mass of these two, and you have a little visual break. So looking down the street, all the buildings look like they belong together, but this one is 3 times the size of these. But from a viewing angle, it feels like a good fit. So next slide. So this is what we call a courtyard apartment building. It's got an elevator in it. It's a higher quality of housing. These are walk-ups. So the shopkeeper who runs this shop might live above the shop. He only got a stairway, no elevator, because it's too small of a building to put that in. And then, of course, at the center of the block, you have the accessory units. So this is the recommended technique, form-based codes. It requires a good urban design. The code doesn't get you there on its own. It's just a technique for translating an urban designer's vision into a final built form, and there are other processes. So what's next? All right, I'll skip these. Okay.
Thank you.
But they're good. Okay. Do you want me to take a seat here?
No, I don't know. This is I like both. Okay. The poet Rumi suggested, wherever you are, be the soul of that place. Easton's son, the late Jim Rouse, said cities were meant to be gardens in which to grow beautiful people. I heard Len Thomas gave a wonderful interview for you, the planner, and I understand that this area that we're discussing is designated a healthcare district. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. And what I thought we should do is go to the deeper meaning and the history of this town. And I'll be very brief on that. So in 1890, 15 women said we need a hospital. And they raised all the money to create a small hospital with 11 beds. And that was the beginning of this hospital. And I thought how many people from Easton were born there and how many had their hands held when they passed. How much life has gone on in that hospital in the center of your town and has grown and grown to this big footprint. Now it will be a new one, but a 10-minute drive, not a walk anymore for many people. Um, so, how do we honor that healing past of this extraordinary place of history? A lot of people think of this area with its tragic history of enslavement. They forget too that this was Quaker DNA in Easton. So there is so much beauty of people. And to this day, I believe because of the people who came before you, that you have attracted such extraordinary people. I'm privileged to know Nancy Roberts, who single handedly brought the ice skating to the inner harbor every winter. That continues. And it's one of the most, it's like this little opening of joy and diversity in Baltimore City, in a city that has become so stratified and cut up from each other. And I wanted to say, when you throw down the gauntlet of something with so much love, it stays. You also helped the Hippodrome come so that Baltimore could have full-scale Broadway. And I thank you so much. I could go on. I see Maddie and Marty and Julie Madden. There are so many people who are attracted to bring their lifetime of experience of trying to use their life to better other lives that are attracted here. So I don't want to engage Easton. I want to marry it. So, I work intuitively. Our building at the American Visionary Art Museum, we had someone who had never built even a doghouse by the age of 50 be the main designer. He had been the favorite student of Louis Kahn, but he had never built anything before. And he went on to do major projects. That's Alex Castro. But we won not only Baltimore, we won the best building, both historic and modern, in history. And it's because there are layers of good. When you see the shining mosaic walls, it's the largest program for apprenticing incarcerated teenagers in the United States. There's layers of good, etc. So, I'm just, you have an extraordinary opportunity here. And let me just say what came to mind. And I have to say, I am very humbled to be with you guys because there is so much caring, so much creative intelligence and expertise here. So please know, have you been following the news? I know you have, because tonight's a big night news-wise too. But when people were getting together in different towns to say we don't want an ice facility here, or we don't want an AI, mega station that's going to use our water at exponentially and electricity, they've been able to stop it. So come together. I hope tonight is just throwing down, the invitation for you to work together and to dream something that you'll be so proud of and that will do good and healing, that will carry on kind of the DNA of the hospital in the highest sense way into the future. So this is what I was thinking. The company that is headquartered, and I'm not related to them, so just the largest implosion company, in the whole world, is in Phoenix, Maryland. And they do very amazing kind of controlled implosion versus, wrecking ball that's bam, 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 so it's this kind of event. And I was thinking, it's so many buildings, but if there could be the removal, of course, a hospital of that age has a lot of toxic stuff, but the removal of that, which would have to happen anyway. But instead of carting that stuff off, if you could um, use it to form something that in this very flat area, I think would be really stunning, would be a something where you'd use the detritus from the implosion there and then cover it to make a mound, almost like a walking labyrinth with maybe quotes and things on healing. I'm a huge proponent not just of trees, but of the Paulownia tree. It's the sacred tree of China and Japan. If you've been to Longwood Garden, you know every May you have those purple blossoms. But it's a tree that grows every year 5 to 20 feet until it's reached maturity. It is light as balsam wood and strong as oak. It has so many benefits. It's anti, what you call it, insects, etc. It doesn't invite them. But all the Japanese like gift boxes are always from Polonia. About 20 years ago, people were losing them from their front lawn because they were being rustled. You know, they were so old and wonderful that the Japanese would come over and like kidnap those trees and bring them back, right? But I thought you could define the new park this way. Peter pointed out something very good when we were riding around with Dave, that the residential neighborhoods that surround your hospital have their backs to the hospital, because you don't want to look over just a parking lot in brick, right? Um, and it's such an opportunity to perhaps rework some of the roads, etc., and have houses that now face this new area that will no longer have such a large building, and in my mind has a chance to be like a healing garden. Um, I'm also a big fan, and I think we all are here, of the beautiful tiny homes. And a lot of them are in, excuse me, the gingerbread kind of looking of, there was a block off of the main downtown that looked a lot like Cape May to me, your kind of housing with, traditional, etc. So whatever it is, um, there's going to be a lot of salivating developers, because um, I grew up in the early 1950s in Baltimore, and it was a town of 945,000 people. And in the time that the world population more than doubled, it is now a town of 540 some thousand. It doesn't make sense. Why have people left? Whereas your town has so much attraction. On the Gucci side, it's getting more like Hamptons of, the New York. But on the other, there are people like Derek Daly that Dave introduced me today, who's, oh, thank you, that is so oriented to just help people. There are others doing wonderful affordable housing too. This is a caring, smart community. So all I can say is it is an amazing opportunity that in the heart of your community, and a throw from one of the very oldest Quaker centers in America, that you have this this possibility of doing something that doesn't look like a lot of the contemporary, even low rise commercial areas, that will enhance your beautiful downtown. So I would love just to open this up, all of us, to your comments and your thoughts. But I want to say stay strong, because you have an opportunity that is so rare, and you want the minds and the hearts that care the most in directing it. And keep it a healing place, please, because that is the best way to respect it. And I want to say to Dave at the Spy, I think so many people must have histories of, with that hospital, even their first employment, their first volunteer position, their loved ones who got great care, their loved ones who passed, their babies that were born there. I wish you would throw down like a 6-word gauntlet and be able to just, keep that some of the stories of this to honor it before it then goes away. And then I think she'd go out with a bang. I'm really into implosion. I'll come for that. Thank you. Thank you.
Is this working? Hello? Okay. That was terrific, both of you. Thanks for the wonderful setup on so many levels. I guess I want to pick up where you were talking about at the end, whereas Peter, give us, we all toured the grounds today of the hospital. What do you think of this kind of opportunity? You've seen so many places, candidate sites, so to speak, for this kind of unique treatment. How do you assess this opportunity?
So again, we're dealing with the known world here. We're not searching for something that's never existed before. You have a grid. Say it again. Okay. So you have a grid of streets. It's entirely likely that your grid will flow through as if the hospital wasn't there. So you'll be extending some streets. The comment that you mentioned there, on one side, the houses are backing up onto a hospital parking lot. So they probably would rather be backing up on another row of houses or another row of something. So where backs face backs and fronts face fronts. Nobody ever likes to front a back of something, and yet you see that a lot in suburban planning. On the other side of the hospital, you have a row of rather grand houses set back from the street. If one is deciding that you're going to go down the new urbanist route and try to build something where the DNA is of a town and not of some big one-use airdropped in. And you'll notice I didn't bias towards either retail. I just said this is the menu. I have no idea what you prefer, but the idea is you want a more finely grained, finely chopped mix of uses. But in the form-based coding world, the uses are secondary to the building form. The question is are you just simply trying to stitch over that site with things that already exist here, or do you want to add a new something? Do you want to create an extension of Main Street continuing south? Now, when you try to stretch a Main Street too long, when you try to take 4 blocks of retail energy and stretch it out to 10, you actually tend to weaken the Main Street. So you got to be really careful. There are some cases where you have a binucleated Main Street, where there's one center up north and another center down south, and then how do you deal with the in-between? I used to work in Sarasota, Florida, and they had that situation. They had one Main Street close to the water, or one center close to the water, and then they had a series of centers along the Main Street. But overall, it suffered from the problem of being stretched. You really want one focal point. So there's some decisions to make. I mean, there are design professionals who work in the new urbanist milieu. Some very fine firms are located in the DC region. There are others that come from further afield. And they're good at 3 things. They're good at the coding. They're good at a public process that absorbs your knowledge and your ideas in a way that you actually participate in the process and see your ideas in the plan, which is very exciting, and people take ownership. And, you're not expected to walk through this on your own. And as I say, it's not the default setting. And again, I don't mean to offend your local planners. They're following the process they learned in school. But again, it's not the thing that produces new urbanism. The new urbanists had to find a different set of tools. So, I can't say, I'm not pulling anything out of my, bag of tricks. I'm just suggesting the methodology. They'd analyze what's there. They'd analyze the assets, what stays, what goes. There's a beautiful little church we saw that probably will want to stay in some form or maybe be moved a little bit. But they're good at that process.
I guess, Rebecca, you have been known to think big, and part of that has been your ongoing dialogue about what to do with Harborplace in downtown, and I believe it was you're proposing the largest roller coaster. I could have gotten that wrong, but you had some
the company that is based in Maryland, who has never done a roller coaster in the state of Maryland, is the largest roller coaster designer in the world, and they're based there. So just like sometimes you have to look for like what's there, and
but I mean, but it's
I get nauseous easily, so I'm not like a big roller coaster.
But I mean, this idea of bringing something new to any kind of
and active.
I mean, it's not as easy as it sounds, right?
Well, it's interesting because when I guess you all know, I've been really trying to fight along with a lot of people this idea of the tall towers, and we've basically lost because the city council and the mayor were 100% behind the development of the inner harbor in Baltimore. The park where the two-level Rouse pavilions are to be demolished, and there to be unlimited height, 5 towers, which will block the view from everybody who in good faith thought they had views, and they pay a lot in taxes. So I could go on for a long time why it's wrong. First off, those pavilions are built on fill, and that's one of the reasons they're built on slab. It was original harbor. So you have to go down to bedrock to build a tall building, which is 250 feet of steel to hit bedrock there. And it will become so expensive. So it breaks my heart because I think it's wrong. But one of the things I found out in terms of interactive, at the, what's it called? The National, what is it near Washington that has a big Ferris wheel, and it's
National Harbor.
the National Harbor. At the National Harbor, there's this huge Ferris wheel that gives you great, ability to look out over all the waterways and everything. And it's year round. In other words, it's little cabins that are climatized, etc. And it has LED lights that can say, go whatever sports team or Merry Christmas or whatever. It has 1 million lights. Guess what it cost? It cost $1 million. It was paid back within 1 year. So I thought, like, well, incentivize kids by neighborhood. If you can make a B or better, that you get to ride for free. Like to do something that brings in and welcomes in people. I also love. I don't know how hot it gets here because I couldn't get good data. I was trying to. I thought Baltimore seemed much hotter than here. I don't know, but have you seen? They had it in Aspen, and it was very expensive then. It's no longer expensive because the technology, computer stuff gets cheaper and cheaper. And what it was, and the Waltons put it in too, was a public place that in the hot weather, have you seen it where the fountains pop up at different, and kids, put their balloons in and they run in, and it's not just kids, it's like, adults to get cooled off, etc. I understand that your Idlewild Park is not pet friendly. Is that true? Like you're not supposed to bring your dog there? I just, which I think Europeans would be like, what? I the dog contingency, right? I just feel like if you put in things that are a delight to people, that there will be DNA that spreads out even more to magnify all the good, all of the wonderful development that's been going on, but that invites the school kids to come downtown too. I'm calling it downtown, but to your center. So.
Let me ask one more question. Let's open it up to the audience. But you know, when you have 14 acres to play with, there are a lot of issues or opportunities to solve many problems. So we have an affordable housing problem in Easton. That's an issue. People are still grieving over the loss of Safeway, which was serving a very specific downtown community. And they're all lining up to be part of this. How do you manage all that? How does a community prepare and make those kind of choices?
So there are three key best practices for new urbanism. We talked about form-based codes. I mentioned the importance of great urban design. The third piece is a public process. They use the term charrette, which is a short for, it's a nickname for the cart that they used to roll through the hallways of the Beaux-Arts school. And the students would draw on charrette. They would work very fast. The design process would take a week. And it seems odd that you would lay out a whole place in a single week. The normal process gets dragged out, and you have a meeting once every month, and you can't remember what you decided in the last meeting. So by doing it very quickly, getting all the experts in the room, making it totally accessible and open to the public, you get all these ideas and all these opinions. The key thing is it's not the number of meetings, it's the size of the meetings. You want a lot of people there, and you want to announce it the old-fashioned way with postcards and stamps, because not everybody in the world is on the internet. And the reason why you want large meetings is because the people who live immediately around the site have one set of interests, and their interest is quiet and make it look just like what's already here, or like what my street looks like. You want to get people from 10 blocks away, 30 blocks away, from 20 miles away. You want to get lots of people engaged who have thoughts about what do we need in the region. So it really is about extracting the intelligence of the community, having some arguments. Better to have an argument around a drafting table where a designer says, well, I'll draw it up this way, and I'll draw it up that way, and what do you guys think? And somebody comes up and says, I really want a YMCA. Just draw it in. The normal response is, oh, no, we've got to do a study. We don't know where the money is going to come from. In the new urbanism, we just draw it in. If it's an empty site for 20 years, it'll have a sign that says Future YMCA. But the point is you'd be amazed how many of those actually got funded over the years. And if it never got drawn in, it's not going to happen. So it really is a kind of a free-for-all in terms of ideas. Again, skilled professionals who can manage all the opinions. So again, I could go on for hours about affordable housing and about grocery stores. It's amazing. Grocery stores, you have huge arguments and fights when a grocery store is proposed. You have huge arguments when a grocery store goes away. What is it about grocery stores? They're really important. They're anchors of community. And because they're so large in America, the problem is once you have a grocery, you create a kind of a dead zone for any other grocery within like 3 miles. It's like a very successful mold growth in a petri dish. It creates a clear zone. In the old days, we had smaller neighborhood serving grocery stores. The problem is most grocers won't come in with a store that small. I mean, actually, the German store Aldi or Lidl, those are getting back to more neighborhood scale. But people want to be able to walk to buy their groceries. And what Aldi has shown is you can get plenty of variety in a small store, and the prices are good too. So the point is these are all factors that are constantly in formation. There are ways to handle affordable housing where it's not offensive to people around, where it's your grandma who's going to be living there, or your kid who hasn't yet found a job. You know, where's Paris's affordable housing? Any idea? Ever seen it? Those rooftop garrets. Okay, they're not going to work for grandma. She's not going to climb 7 flights of stairs, but to a young graduate of the École who hasn't yet gotten a job and who can bound up that flight of stairs, it's not a great place. It's one room. There's a toilet down the hall that you share with 30 other people. You got one window. You got a hot plate. But guess what? You're in the heart of Paris. You've got that public realm outside your door. So you're just delighted to be living there. So, you know, if you take the affordable housing problem and you break it down by types, by elderly, I have a special needs son. He's going to need a different kind of housing than that young graduate in Paris. If you break it down into all the component parts, you can actually fit it into a neighborhood in a way that it's not offensive. But the idea that, oh no, we're not going to have an elevator. The minute you put an elevator into that roof garret, suddenly the price is doubled. Okay? So don't put an elevator in, let the student run the flight of stairs. You know, it may not fit all of our health codes with the toilet down the hall, but it's another option. So, but anyway, so yes, the process I recommend that generally resolves all those things. And again, I don't mean to paint it with rose-colored glasses. Arguments will happen, but it's a great venue for the arguments. It means when the plan finally gets to City Hall, the opposition doesn't show up. They're feeling like, okay, this is the best we can hope for. And they stay away in droves. And City Council is delighted that this thing moves through effortlessly.
Any thoughts on your part on that front?
I was the first American apprentice to Marcel Marceau, and I lived in a fifth floor walk up. Could not begin to do that today. But what was so funny, talking about toilets, you know how elegant the Paris Opera is, everyone? Palais Garnier. At that time, I was engaged to be like an extra of looking like one of the Rape of the Sabine women, you know, with my hair flowing down in Hector Berlioz's Les Troyennes, right? And I went backstage and I said, you know, to Marcel, I said, you know, where's the bathroom? And I went in and there was this porcelain tile with feet marks on it and an empty hole. And I said, oh no, they took it out. And it was a Turkish toilet where you have to like squat over the hole and then pull like the shower like mechanism. So it's so funny that there's that elegance and the whatever. I don't know whether people today, I think with the Americans, we've been you know, spoiled. But I would like to speak about some words from Jim Rouse. And he said some really great stuff. He said,
We should tell people that Jim Rouse, the famous developer, grew up in Easton.
yes, yeah. And I built the
those
Jim
who might
Rouse
not know.
Center because I believe with all my heart that creative acts of social justice constitute life's highest performance art. And he worked so hard to try to make life better, and he did it with a beautiful heart. But he said something that really echoes what you were saying tonight. He talked about. Let me get this. Okay, this is worthwhile. Thus, the most important single fact is that we have in our hands the opportunity to make our city in our generation the most livable, the most beautiful, and the most effective city in America. And I look at what you've pulled off here in Easton already, and it's really miraculous. So I wanted to give you kind of that confidence. And he said the best way to attack any problem is to ask what things would be like if they worked. The other thing is to find out the way to find new, this is all Jim's words, the way to find new opportunities is to discover needs or yearnings of people that are not being satisfactorily met. The way to prosper is to do that well. You know, we're a graying community here, and I think that's an issue. That's why I'm saying if whatever you do is somehow welcoming to your grandchildren and to people who have children who are growing up here now, I don't know the statistics, but I would imagine the largest incoming population is vintage, is my age and older. And I think a town to really thrive has to meet the needs of both, to enchant both. I I have a darling friend who Mary Ellen Linnett, who lives here with her wonderful mom, who's still driving, so beware. She's in her late 90s, and she's a speed demon. I mean, and she said, I said, so what do you think is the biggest problem in Easton? She says, transportation. Try and get an Uber here. And even hooking up with the other wonderful, your surrounding towns that you have that come to eat here. But how difficult it is to have transportation. So there may be some enchanting hub around this too. When I brought up Polonia, I forgot to tell you, did you know that the Polonia tree consumes 11 times more carbon dioxide than any other tree? It's like just such a gift, and the fact that it looks good quickly. So I just think that I want to hear where you come out. I'm going to be keeping an eye on you guys because Dave, I also think of you as being someone who can throw down the gauntlet and get the feedback on a regular basis. And I know that you don't need another job, but there you are. I came for free because I so believe in the spy. I wanted to say that.
Thanks. Thank you. Hey, we have a little bit of time left. Because we're taping this, we have to, if you have questions, let's get a mic set up. Maybe Al can help with that. Are there anybody
Dave,
who
I
wants
can walk a mic around if you like, or you could repeat questions back to make sure that everybody hears them. Which would you prefer?
Okay. Oh, maybe I just repeat back then.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions or thoughts? Speak loudly.
Thank you.
I heard access. How do you get here from other places? I heard something about time, that a place needs a certain amount of seasoning. Rome wasn't built in a day, so certain layering. What was the other thing I heard? Got it. Did I hear you say you're riding your bike? Did I hear that? Or was that my imagination?
No, you know what I'm hearing from you? Do you know the lyrics to the song Hotel California? You can never leave.
So I'll take on the one that I enjoy the most, which is the issue of walkability. That's what the 5-minute walk is all about. If you make it so easy for people to walk to their daily needs, then you won't have a lot of cars on the road. And if you're a cyclist, the roads will feel safer. Every September, I travel to Europe. About half the time I go to the Netherlands, and I just love to ride my bike around a place where life is centered on the bike. And that's possible in a place like this. You're fairly level. I mean, I grew up in Washington State. I hate rain. I don't like riding my bike in the rain. Actually, Maryland's weather, even though it's a little colder, it doesn't rain as much in the winter. But, you're in a town, so you're not going to have metropolitan level amenities. In Manhattan, you go down on the subway, one comes by every 3 minutes. It's a lot of access, it's a lot of mobility, but you're also paying the price to live in a very, very busy, cramped city. So, you're not going to have everything in a small town, but hopefully you're going to have good small town urbanism here. And a lot of those problems are solvable. If there is I visited Finland, where they have a very highly developed, the taxis and the local mobility. They have policies that encourage something called Kutsu Plus, a Finnish word that they invented. But it was the idea of shared vans that follow a route, but they can also deviate from the route to pick people up and drop them off. A very creative approach. It didn't quite work, but it was a good experiment, and it moved the needle forward. The work I do now currently is almost exclusively devoted to transportation. But some really cool things are coming down the pipe. So
We have a question over here.
I wanted to ask, maybe to the group, but also to your observation. Did you drive by the hospital thinking it was a foregone conclusion that it would be raised? Did you look at it thinking maybe we could repurpose this space, maybe we could turn it into something else? Keep the campus, keep the architecture. Is that ever done? Is that a possibility? Or do we have to wipe the slate clean?
Can we keep some of that hospital building up?
Well, I asked that question today. And again, it's always a bit bizarre when you learn what the value of buildings are. What buildings can be repurposed and what buildings can't. Particularly with the big exodus from downtowns that happened after the pandemic. All of a sudden people say, we don't need these office buildings. Some of them can convert to housing, some of them can't be. And a lot of what we build as office buildings in America wouldn't even be allowed in Europe because they have certain standards of daylighting. You know, American office buildings are hundreds of feet thick. So if you're in the middle of that building, you need air conditioning just to make it tolerable. Because a breeze, even if you had the windows open, the breeze would never get to where you are. So that's a constantly changing field. It feels tragic to me to send so much of a building back to the landfill every time the uses change. There's a wonderful book by Stuart Brand, who wrote the whole Earth catalog called How Buildings Learn. And his whole thesis is build a dumb box. Build a simple box. Don't worry about the wiring and all the specialized stuff. And what you do is you just retrofit it every few decades for some different use. But the more sophisticated you get with embedding the wires in the walls, the harder it is to change the use. So again, you look at those buildings and you go, a lot of money was spent on those. There's got to be a way to reuse them. It's going to have to do with the depth of the floor plate. Does it adapt itself for housing? Does it fit some developer's vision? And again, a skilled team, that's part of what they look at. The first thing they do is they do an inventory. Which buildings are junk, that are full of asbestos, that have to go? Which ones have layouts that might be suitable? They look at the block structure to see whether they can have a reasonable, network of streets. I mean, one of the weird fantasies that I always have, so you know what it's like to visit a European town, that the outline of the town is the outline of the old fortress walls, okay, with these weird little jigs and jogs, but the fortress, the battlements are long gone, but the streets still follow that layout. I have this weird fantasy about regional malls in America where the Sears was and the Penny's was, that one day they're going to build roads that follow that. And you're in you're in the middle of Illinois and it's all flat and you're kind of going, why is this road doing these weird things? It's interesting. It's not as boring as just straight streets. So I don't know. I mean, urbanism, it's quirky and perfection is not part of the vocabulary when you're talking urbanism.
Yeah, Thon?
That's really good. When I was 11 years old, I went to the Phillips Art Gallery, and they had an artist there who was a survivor of the Holocaust named Frederick Hunterwasser. And he was, as you know, just a person who loved and had a great sense of design and a love of the earth as well as people. And he was very upset that at the end of World War II, where there was so much destruction of cities and buildings, that they were putting up very quickly big boxes, cinder block housing for people who had gone through so much suffering already. And he said he bet the city of Vienna that he could build for far less than what they were building these, kind of just horrible rectangle buildings, housing, that he could build something really beautiful. And so they let him try. And to this day, he left, by the way, his entire estate to keep wealthy people from moving into his housing for the poor in Vienna. But what he did initially for the people coming into those apartments was he asked, "What's your favorite colors, in your family? Are there colors that are special to you?" And he had them take a piece of chalk and draw as far as their arm would stretch under their window. It was always never just a square thing. It was always this kind of organic shape. And then he would infill it with that. So it would look like the mosaic tiles, like it was dripping off of the building. If you have a chance to see that. So I loved your question because I believe in adaptive reuse. A part of our building at AVAM was a 1913 curved building. And then the old whiskey warehouses. And we really celebrated them with the modern additions that actually formed a Fibonacci circle that allowed wheelchairs to come in with everybody else. All of our entrances where everybody comes in the same way. It wasn't like, oh, people using wheelchairs have to come in the side. I don't know, that might be something to look at. The building itself, the hospital itself, is kind of a mishmash, of styles and errors, etc. And so looking at those buildings that are more historic that you were showing, that should be preserved maybe, I don't know whether the whole thing would be a blessing to keep as it is, because that's,
We have to wrap it up, but I hope you all enjoyed it. Peter, you have a couple more thoughts, and then we'll close it out.
Two quick things. One, in the images I showed, you didn't see anything blazingly modern. There's nothing in New Urbanism that says you can't do that. Frank Gehry's museum in Bilbao, the stainless steel, which looks like a big flame, there are photos of it terminating one of the main streets in Bilbao, and it's exhilarating. So that idea of a terminated vista, I showed a Greek temple front. It can be a splendid piece of modernism. Modernism does tend to work well in things like museums that are look-at-me buildings. If your everyday houses may not be such a good fit, but there's nothing about New Urbanism that is inherently, in terms of architectural style, needing to be traditional. Second thing, overall, the question that, well, we didn't give you a lot of opportunities for questions, but if there was a question of, how do we do this, Peter? You're going to do it by intercepting the process that is underway. There is a business process happening. The current owner of the property is probably gathering interest from developers. The last thing they want is a bunch of citizens getting in the way of that. Local government has a process for moving things along too. So you're going to need to interrupt the process that's underway, whatever it is, and you're going to probably need to annoy some people. For very little cost, you can do a design exploration that you all, as citizens, sponsor and say, this is not necessarily government, it's not necessarily business, we just want to have a look at some possibilities. And there are some fine firms who work for very reasonable fees that if everybody says this is a priority, we just want to have a peek behind the curtain, we want to look at that hospital building and evaluate it, not from the developer's pro forma, but we want to see what are the things that it might lend itself towards. Any number of explorations that you're curious about, it ain't going to happen through business as usual. So it'll take an extra effort, but it'll be worth it.
Well, that's a good place to leave it. Thank you, Rebecca Hoffberger, Peter Katz. And good luck, Easton, on this project. We'll be watching.